Welcome to the Whole Note. Today we will be reviewing Pippin by Stephen Schwartz. Oh my heavens, I absolutely love this musical. I also have a very special guest. His name is Caleb Smith. He is a singer, an actor, and a pianist. So Caleb, tell the audience about yourself.
Hi, nice to see everybody. I'm really glad to be on this show. My name's Caleb. I'm 19. I'm just finishing up at College of Southern Maryland, where I'm studying theater. I do a lot of writing, a lot of acting, a lot of singing, piano playing. I'm starting to learn guitar. Just anything arts related, especially performing arts related, is my favorite thing to do with my spare time. And musicals are a big part of that.
So we're going to be talking about Pippin. Now, Caleb has done Pippin. I have not. It has always eluded me, but it's a show that we both absolutely love and adore. So Caleb, what are your thoughts on Pippin?
I absolutely love Pippin. I had a big show crush on just Pippin as a show for the longest time. And I was really excited when CSM said they were going to do it in the 2019 season. I literally started preparing for my audition the summer before the spring that they did it, because I had wanted to do Pippin for so long. I really relate to it because it's so much about finding yourself and figuring out who you are.
Yeah, that's the one thing that this show definitely does. It is almost just like a show that I have reviewed previously, Passing Strange. It is about a guy who is just trying to find himself in many different varieties and in many different ways. And Pippin, yeah, he goes through a lot. All right, I guess let's just go ahead and go song by song at this point. Let's do a song by song breakdown. All right, so the first song that we come up to is the opening of the show, which is Magic to Do, sung by the leading player. Now, the soundtrack that we will be following is going to be the 2013 Broadway revival, where the leading player is played by Patricia Miller. Oh, bless her so much. It is a great opening number. Like it literally tells the audience what they're about to see, because a lot of times in this show they will recall a part of the opening number to set up what's about to happen.
It's such a good storytelling song, which is one of the reasons that especially like Magic to Do is one of the most famous songs from Pippin, and you'll hear it just in the musical theater world outside of a Pippin reference, just because it's so musical theater.
And you're introduced to literally every character in the show, and you automatically know, okay, this character is like this character is like this character is like this.
Yeah, there's like a 32 measure bit right at the beginning after Patricia Miller sings a verse that introduces literally all of them in like 30 seconds, and you already know who all the characters are. It's such a good storytelling song.
And each character sort of sings a bit of a plot point that their character is definitely involved in. Hang on. I'm trying to remember the actual lyrics now, because in my head it's going through the musical, but I'm like, wait, stop.
Oh.
I know there's intrigue, thoughts to bring
disaster, humor hidden by a master, that's Bertha, who's very funny later in the show.
Isn't Intrigue, Thoughts to Bring Disaster sung by Fistrata?
Yes. Because she eventually does that stuff, foreshadowing. And Charlemagne gets battles barbarous and bloody. And
now, the funny thing that we have to mention, Charlemagne is actually a real person, whereas everybody else is sort of fictional.
Yeah, the whole musical is like really loosely based on this fictional kind of real person who was supposedly the son of Charlemagne. All the stuff that happens is made up for the musical, but like Charlemagne is a real person, and we get a little bit of representation of his crusades and wars that he was involved in.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I know Fistrata is played by Charlotte D'Ambrose, which love that one. Pippin is played by Matthew James Thomas. I'm reading my cue sheets over here. Uh, Bertha is Andrea Martin, which, if you don't know who Andrea Martin is, she is a phenomenal, phenomenal performer. And Charlemagne is played by Terrence Mann, who is a huge Broadway star, and I love his work.
Yeah, it's a really strong cast, especially Patina Miller. You just can't talk about Patina Miller in this role enough. She's just outstanding.
Very much so. I mean, it won her a Tony, so
yeah,
obviously she was really good in this role. Which there's a little bit of history with that one as well, but we'll get to that later. So Magic to Do, it introduces all of the characters, and at the very end, it is we forgot a major plot point. So the character of Pippin is literally pulled out of the audience.
Oh yes. Yeah, so the whole ensemble is like a troupe of players led by the lead player. And all of the parts, there are some interpretations. I think they did this in the revival. I'm not sure. They always do it with Pippin, but the idea is that they tell this story again and again. It's kind of like a traveling troupe of players, and Pippin gets pulled out, and the lead player tells everybody not to expect too much of him because it's his first time playing the role.
So then we get into the second song, which is Corner of the Sky.
Another really famous one right off the bat.
And it's literally Pippin's ballad, and it's him singing about what he really wants to do in this world. And it is a beautiful song.
It is.
And it starts off with just him being wide-eyed and just, all I want to do is just find my corner of the sky. I want to know my place in this world. Caleb, what are your thoughts on this song?
Oh, it is the quintessential, like, I want purpose kind of song. Unfortunately, that leads to you hearing it at auditions a lot. So it's better to listen to it on your own time instead of 10 times in a row when no one could find source material. But it is a lovely song. I really love this song. I've worked on this song for auditions several times before, but I also just love the song. It really shows us who Pippin is really quickly, and it gives us the perfect idea of the core theme of Pippin, like we had talked about earlier, about finding yourself and knowing who you are, and all of the lines about, like, well, where do I belong? And everything has its season, everything has its time, but, like, where am I going to be? It's just the perfect look inside Pippin's mind immediately.
Then the next song is, well, first, after Corner of the Sky, we're reintroduced to Charlemagne, who is this older gentleman, but he's the king. And everything that he does is like grandiose and big and powerful. And you're also introduced to Fastrada, which is I'll say his current wife, because she's not Pippin's mother, but she is much younger than the king, and almost, I'll say, like, not that much older than Pippin, but she's very.
Fastrada's like definitely a conniving kind of trophy wife kind of character. She doesn't seem all that important at first, but there's a lot of good foreshadowing in the way that the revival actress plays her, because you see that maybe there's something more that you don't see.
And you're also introduced to Louis, which is Pippin's brother, his half brother.
I love Louis.
And Louis is literally as dumb as a box of bricks, but Louis is pretty, and Louis loves Louis.
Louis loves Louis. One of my favorite gimmicks from this show. Louis loves Louis.
And Louis is very, very into war and into battle, which Charlemagne is like, yes, love it. Pippin, why aren't you like your brother? And so Pippin joins in with the army, and Charlemagne sings this next song, which is War is a Science.
Oh, Forest of Science is a nice patter song that really gives you a look at how it's got a lot of commentary in it about like how stupid war is in general, especially Charlemagne's wars that were mostly just a power move, and not always with purpose. He has this one line where he basically says it doesn't matter if you live to tell my story because writers are going to tell my story. So it's all about his legacy. And he really reveals that. And that's kind of why Pippin, who is so well educated and maybe not into this necessarily, gets caught up in it and goes to try and follow Charlemagne and make him happy.
And the thing about this song is, especially with the revival, it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. It's almost like they wanted to recreate the modern Major General song, but with this one.
Yes, and I think they do it pretty well for the most part. It's not an easy song to get right, especially kind of a fast-paced, increasing, accelerating patter song for bass baritone, which is not something you get very often in musical theater.
Exactly. There's not many really good bass baritone songs, and this is definitely one of them.
Absolutely.
So then we go into war. And it is the next song, Glory. And the leading player just comes out with this bellowing note of glory. And you're just like,
I love it.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, this is where the show really takes a bit of a turn. And I really like this part because I've always kind of thought of the lead player as kind of a devil figure who's trying to corrupt and lead Pippin down the wrong path. And there is nowhere more clear of that in this entire show than the beginning and the middle of Glory, because Patricia Miller, of course, like I've said, absolutely wonderful at this role. She kills this part. You get, as Kenny said, this bellow of just glory. We're gonna go out and we're gonna fight, and even as an audience member, you're a little bit excited, you're a little bit scared, like you don't know what's gonna happen.
And the funny thing with the music is, as they are having this war, it's very
Yeah. It's
I'm like,
jazzy, which I really like.
I'm like, this is a juxtaposition between seeing blood and guts on the stage, but then seeing the leading player just having a nice soft shoe. And I'm like, what in the world?
Yes. And then we have the really famous Fosse piece in the middle. We have the Manson trio, where the lead player and two of his or her followers are just dancing in the middle of this war. And it's so chilling because you have all of the glory and the guts and the gore, and you have a bit of a battle that happens right afterwards. But here's the lead player and her followers just dancing, doing a little soft shoe.
Now, I will say, the actual musical, this song is a lot longer, and there's a lot more that happens. But like in the cast recording, of course, they're not going to give you the entire 10-minute track.
Yeah, the cast recording has the entirety of the song before the war, and then it has an abbreviated Manson trio and battle. But if you were seeing this live, there's so much more that goes on. When we did our production at CSM, I was juggling decapitated heads and cut off limbs. So it's like kind of a gory circus act, and it's really entertaining and disturbing at the same time, which is also a good way of saying it's Pippin.
And Pippin is like, this is not for me. This is too much, and I don't know what to do. So he runs off. He just runs away, and it leads us into.
And he has an amusing conversation with the decapitated head, which I will remind you of because I was the decapitated head, and I was very excited about that.
And like that little conversation is like, so what was it all for? He was like, I guess for glory. And Pippin's like, this isn't what I want. And so he runs off, and the leading player comes on and sings Simple Joys, which is kind of like it's kind of a precursor to what Pippin is about to start looking for.
Yes, it's a real good contrast to Glory, because here we just had this like big bellowing, very organy, cathedral sounding kind of war song and all of this guts and gore, and then the next one is just, it's light, it's fun. The main instrument in the background is a guitar, and you get a lot of circus tricks in front of it. For our production, I did hula hoop tricks here. There's a lot of cool circus tricks in the revival, especially.
Which I have to give them props, because I never imagined a circus theme for Pippin. And when I saw the revival cover way back in the day, I was like, oh, a circus tent? So they did circus acts? And then I looked up videos, and it was literally like Circus Soleil. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are talented.
It's so cool. Simple Joys, for the revival recording, and for the revival production on Broadway, they did this this choreography with these big like yoga ball things to make it look like they were bouncing on bubbles. Look it up. It's so cool. It's so cool.
And then we're introduced to Pippin's grandmother, Berth, or is it Bertha?
I've heard it pronounced both ways. I think they say birth in the recording, but I could be wrong.
And she is this older woman, but she still has it.
That's a good way of saying it.
She is very, very free and very, very open about everything dealing with life, sexuality, and just love. And she sings this beautiful song called No Time at All. And whenever this song is performed, the audience always sings with it, because Bertha makes them sing with it.
It's such a nice moment. It can be either really funny and awkward watching the audience not know what to do, or it can be so touching if the people are willing to sing along, because it's such a nice song about life and just enjoying the present.
And so like she just encourages Pippin to be like, honey, just go enjoy yourself. I mean, there are pleasures everywhere. Just go have fun.
Yeah.
And
she lightly encourages him to sleep around. She is definitely responsible for what happens next.
And it's so weird, because you have this older woman telling her grandson, hey, go sow your seed. Why are you talking to me? And then we go into With You. Oh my head. We're going to unpack With You really quick, and there's a lot to unpack with this song.
Oh yeah.
So first it starts off with just Pippin, and just Pippin sees a girl walk past, and he just starts singing to her. And then he sees another girl. He's like, oh wait, but you as well. I want to be with you. And then another girl, oh, I want to be with you. And then all of a sudden, he's just with all three of them. And then the song just changes. You know what, Caleb? You've done this song. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience what happens next?
So I was a minor when we did this. So I was not in this part.
You were not in this.
I was not a part of this scene, but I can tell you that what I saw from off stage looked a lot like an orgy. There's all kinds of shenanigans going on in stage at this point. There's written in parts of the music for whip cracks, and there's a part in the choreography for the revival, I believe, where they start throwing Pippin from girl to girl. It's really kind of funny.
And they go from girl to girl to girl. Then all of a sudden there's a guy, and there's another guy.
There's guys,
there's a girl, and it is just a cacophony of flesh. Now, granted, nobody's nude. It's just Pippin is just enjoying all the cardinal pleasures that he can.
And suddenly it's too much for him, and he has to break away, and he's like, enough. And this whole segment here is really funny to me, because if you take the beginning part of With You on its own from the soundtrack, all you get is the song and the song lyrics and the waltz, and you don't get all of the lines that Kenny had mentioned about, like, you don't get all of the wait, but 1 second, and then he goes over to like the other girl. You don't get all of his not being faithful, and it just sounds like this lovely love ballad, and it's a gorgeous song, but when you see it in the context of the show, it's not as charming. It's very funny because every single time he finishes saying some really affirming, poetic statement of love, he's like, "Oh, but not you anymore." And then it's just sex.
The funny thing about this soundtrack, and both the revival and the original, is they don't give you everything at one time in terms of the music. They give you just little bits of a song, and they're like, well, if you want to hear what happens, like the whole thing, come and see the show.
Yeah.
Or
which also works well because there's so much going on at so many of these moments. Because Pippin isn't like a musical, like that's more of a kind of an opera musical where you're going to be singing the whole time, but the bursts of song and dance that you get are so intense that it's almost better to not get it all at once, because you have to like be prepared for how much is going to go on, all the acrobatics and all the blaring vocals from the lead player especially.
Now, it's funny to note that the original Broadway cast of this was directed by Bob Fosse. So of course he wants music so he can do his choreography for. And both like Simple Joys, Glory and With You are both dance heavy songs.
Oh yeah. I mean, Simple Joys does have a dance break, but especially those two. With You, I mean, all of the orgy is obviously like kind of symbolic dance choreography for the most part, and Glory is just this like 5-minute long like slaughter fest of jazz dance, which is, if that sentence isn't enough to get you to listen to Pippin, I don't know what is. But there's also just plenty of soft shoe. There's a soft shoe bit in War is a Science as well. There's just so much dance, which of course makes sense because Fosse was involved.
Now we get into the next song after Pippin runs off from having too much cardinal pleasure. Spread a Little Sunshine, which is sung by Fistrata. And it's literally Fistrata plotting and planning to kill her husband. and my favorite line from this is just, oh, I'm just an ordinary housewife. And I'm like, nah, you're not. You are very, very conniving. And the song is literally about Fistrata trying to position her husband in a way to where he is somewhere so that way he can be killed. And she can.
Because you've heard that Pippin has been led by the lead player from this, which again is worth noting. The lead player basically suggests all of these steps except for the first one with the war. And after the big orgy, gives him a newspaper and says, well, look at what your father's doing. Look at all these horrible wars he's the cause of. And so Pippin decides on his own, quote unquote, that he's going to take out Charlemagne. And when Fistrata hears about that, she keeps trying to position him in a place that Pippin can find him and kill him, quote unquote, on his own again. Everyone's always manipulating Pippin in this show.
Which it speaks to Pippin's character that he doesn't truly have an idea all of his own. And everything that he has been doing up until this point is because someone else has been telling him to do it.
Yes, which again is very, very, very powerful, put into the theme of finding yourself, because so often that is what it feels like. It's like, how do I find myself when every which way someone I know or love or who's influenced me or has power over me has been influencing me and telling me what I can and can't do. So in a way, it makes sense that Pippin's being manipulated so much because he needs to escape from all of that.
So at the end of Spread a Little Sunshine, Charlemagne goes to the temple, and that's where Fistrata's like, oh, all in day's work of just a simple little housewife. And we are then introduced to this. The show almost has a shift, like a slight tonal shift. Yes. It becomes almost Charlemagne explains to Pippin why he is doing everything that he's doing, and it takes almost like a religious tone to it. And he's like, I'm doing everything because I want the betterment of the world. And it's almost like the supervillain talk, like the ending supervillain speech right before the superhero goes, well, guess what? Plan foiled. And when Pippin stabs Charlemagne, it's one of those, if you're going to do it, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And Pippin does,
Yeah.
and Charlemagne dies.
Yeah, this is one of the like serious moments in the show.
And then they start singing Morning Glow, which technically is the sun rising, which is a double meaning because now Pippin is ascending to the throne because he has offed his father. Yes. So the leading player during this is just ecstatic. Like, she is so happy that her plan is going exactly according.
She's gotten exactly what she wanted at this point. And it is such a serious moment contrasted with everything that's just happened and all of the sex and the conniving from Frustrata as well. And suddenly you just have a father and a son, and they both think they're right. And Pippin is very convinced that he's right. And he has a moment of doubt, I think, before he kills him. And that's what prompts Charlemagne to say that bit of, well, if you're going to do it, then just do it now. And Pippin does, for better or for worse. And I absolutely love this song. Morning Glow is just really beautiful to begin with. It's just such a nice score. The revival also adds a little bit of an intro to this song that the original didn't have, that I think really changes the tone, because there's a lot more seeing into Pippin's head at the beginning of the revival version of Morning Glow, because he has this moment of doubt again. His lyrics are something along the lines of, why won't my hand stop shaking? Because he's still like a little frightened of what he's done. And of course the lead player is just overjoyed because she got what she wanted.
And that's the end of Act 1.
Yes, a doozy of a one act.
And the audience is left like, okay, so where do we go from here? So the opening of Act 2, you see Pippin in the throne, and he is literally taking requests from the peasants, from everyone else. And
he's determined to say yes to everything, even though Charlemagne used to say no to everything. Which leads to a couple of my favorite lines in this show.
Go ahead, say what they are.
Oh, they're really funny. I don't remember the exact words, but essentially, the poor come and ask him for more power over their land because they think it's unfair that they should be working the land and getting no money. And he says, well, then peasants will own the land they work. And then the nobles come to him and they say, well, if they own the land that we used to own, we don't have money to pay taxes, so we're not going to pay taxes anymore. And he says, that's good, because there's no more taxes anymore. And then the army approaches him and says, we don't want to be your army anymore because we don't have a salary because you're not getting taxes anymore. And he says, well, then we won't fight wars. We have no army anymore. And then immediately Lewis comes in with news that the barbarians are sacking and destroying their outskirting towns. And Pippin suddenly is like, well, we'll communicate with them. We'll try to work this out in a peaceable manner. And the messenger comes back, and the barbarian leader says that the only way they leave without burning their cities down is if they have Pippin's reproductive organs on a stick. And so he backs up and he's like, fine, we're going to destroy them in war. And then he has to undo all of his decisions. And he goes from being tremendously popular because the people own their land and don't have to pay taxes and don't have to work, to suddenly like they realize just how bad life was before because they had a moment of freedom and now they don't anymore. And so the people are furious at him.
And so what Pippin does, or the leading player does, is they undo Charlemagne's death.
Yes. Just poof, he's alive again.
Just like,
and the best part is we did all of this. We had like our little Deus Ex Machina moment of like, forget it, we'll just bring Charlemagne back. Everything's broken right now. And all Charlemagne says is, don't let it happen again. Which that is absolutely one of my favorite lines of the show, because it's like all of that, all of Morning Glow, all of this drama, and all it gets is a one-line admonishment, and that's it.
And then Pippin has this crisis of identity, and the leading player is like, cool it, honey. And then it goes into the opening song of Act Two, which is On the Right Track. And it's a wonderful duet with Pippin and the leading player. And you start noticing that a lot of things that the leading player starts doing, Pippin starts doing. So you start to see that Pippin start to mimic the leading player. And if we go by the logic that, you know, the leading player is the devil, it's the devil manipulating, once again, Pippin to pretty much have Pippin do whatever.
Yeah, he's still not escaped at this point. This is another one of those key moments where we get to see a lot of the lead player. Because we just had a lot of Pippin. We had Morning Glow and we had all of the Simple Joy stuff. And we've had so much Pippin for a while, and now we get some good lead player. And again, she's just manipulating him a lot. Patricia Miller's harmonies in this track are just glorious, just musically. Her control of her vibrato is insane. You really have to listen to it yourself. I don't know how on earth you can describe such a beautiful sound. It's just so nice. This is another moment where we're deviating from the original a little bit. The original also had a lot of ensemble parts in this. And the revival chooses to make it just the two of them, which I think is a lot better for showing more of the lead player, like we had just talked about, because then we get to see how she's manipulating, and it's like especially her, but also the ensemble instead of like both equally.
Now, we're going to talk about Patricia Miller for just a brief hot second. So my first introduction to her was when I heard her singing Random Black Girl. And I cannot remember who wrote it, and I'm an awful person, but it's a great song. But then she played Dolores, what is her name in the musical? Well, she was in Sister Act and she played Dolores.
Yeah. Was it somebody, diva something? She wanted to be a diva. Yeah.
And whoa, her voice and her harmonies in that show, especially Raise Your Voice. Okay, we're sidetracking. We'll talk about Sister Act on another podcast. But
so another great show. Listen to that too.
So then we get into the leading player introducing Catherine and Theo. And the thing with the leading player introducing Catherine and Theo is Catherine is obviously an older woman than Pippin. And the leading player definitely makes point of that. She's like, you're going to do this because you don't have many good years left ahead of you. And I'm like, it's like Act Two is when you really start to see the controlling part of the leading player. And you start to really question a lot of the leading player's motives and morals, especially during this part, because the leading player is like belittling the actress playing Catherine. And she makes Catherine do her entrance so many times.
yes, that gag. She has to enter like 3 different times. And it's really perfect because the first act we see a lot of like maybe the evil of the lead player, but we don't see why yet. And this is where we get to see like, oh wow, you're really in charge of everything and manipulating everything. And I think the point that Catherine has been with the troupe longer is also really important here, because that's the reason that she's questioning a little more, as we'll see in some of the later songs.
So then Catherine sings, and there he was, which is just a beautiful song. It's very short, and you just see Catherine being introduced to Pippin. And of course,
a pleasant introduction, a little bit of love at first sight.
And then we get into Kind of Woman, and it's just Catherine just, saying, hey, I'm exactly the kind of woman you need. You are where you're supposed to be right now, Pippin. And I am going to be as airy and as beautiful for you as possible, because I'm just a simple kind of woman.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite funnier songs in this show. I do not remember her name, but the revival Catherine has such a nice voice.
Rachel Bay Jones.
Rachel Bay Jones. Yes, Rachel Bay Jones. She's so good. She goes towards a lot more of the unique kind of quirky tones that Catherine can have at times than I think some other versions have. Nothing against the original at all. Still a good recording, but I just prefer this Catherine because I really like the tone that she gives the part.
And so then Catherine and Pippin are, for the most part at this point, married, and Theo is now Pippin's stepson. And there's a lot of interaction between Theo and Pippin. And one of those interactions is Pippin bringing Theo bringing Pippin a duck.
Yes. So they're kind of like they're living together and they're lovers. They're not married just yet. And this is actually important because eventually when she tries to marry him, he gets scared away because he's got terrible commitment issues. As we've seen, he's not especially faithful either, because he's so convinced he needs to find big things. And yes, Theo brings him his dying pet duck. And that leads to one of my favorite little funny songs again in this show, which is Prayer for a Duck. I love Prayer for a Duck. It's just a small, kind of slightly religious sounding ballad about how God should save the duck. And it's very obvious that they're making it up on the spot, which is one of my favorite parts about this song.
Before we get too deep into that one, there's a song right before that, which is Extraordinary, which is about,
I had forgotten that, yes.
Which is about Pippin just saying that he is literally extraordinary. He can do anything and everything. It doesn't matter what it is. And you start to see Pippin's ego at this point.
Oh, yeah.
And you start to realize that he thinks that he is meant for something bigger than what he has for Catherine and Theo. So this is more like this is almost the I don't want to say the tension. This is almost the catalyst for him going, yeah, I think it's time for me to head out.
I would agree, because he doesn't have the empathy really to quite say anything to either of them yet. He's just kind of putting up with it because he doesn't know what else to do. Because the other part of Extraordinary is he's really convinced that he's so much better than everyone else. And sometimes some productions imply that it's because he thinks that because he's royal. The original does that. I think the revival focuses more on just the fact that his ego was blown up, and he's spent so long trying to find himself that he's convinced that because he hasn't found himself yet, that means that he's better than other people, and that he somehow has a bigger or more important purpose than other people. And so again, he doesn't have the empathy to tell anyone yet, but you can tell he wants to get out of there.
Exactly. And then we get into the Prayer of the Duck, where
that's the prayer. Yes.
The thing about this song is Pippin doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to save this duck.
He doesn't care about
it. It's the look from Catherine and it's the look from Theo that makes him go, okay, I'll do this. And it's very tongue-in-cheek, because with how Pippin is doing it, he's doing it over the top, but at the same token, he's like, save this duck. Save this duck so I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. He's just kind enough to do something, but not kind enough to mean it when he does it.
And so when the duck is saved, Catherine is like, you are just who we need. And then we get into Love Song.
Yes.
I love and hate Love Song.
Same. It serves a function within the show, but musically speaking, I think it is the weakest song in the show. It's not bad, but it's just compared to some of the pieces I really love, like Morning Glow and the beginning part of With You and Glory. It's just not as good, and it sticks out because so much of the rest of the score is good.
And it's almost as if they're like, oh, we need a love duet. Let's
Hmm.
throw this in there, and we'll make it to where this is where them two are starting to fall in love with each other, or
Yes.
so you think.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of an idea with how the lead player introduces it in the show. Um, that it is a little bit tongue in cheek and it's more just like, we have to have a love song, so here is one. But they don't play on that quite enough, I don't think, for the gag to follow through. And so it just ends up being a little underwhelming.
And then Pippin has once again a change of heart because he cannot commit, as Caleb
Yeah.
said.
And Catherine tries to sit him at the head of the table and say, "This is where you belong. I'm gonna marry you. This is our family now." And he's like, "Oh no."
He gets commitment issues and he runs off. Go
Mhm.
figure. And so the leading player is trying to close the curtain on Catherine, but Catherine starts singing a song that is not a part of the show. And the
Yeah.
leading player is like, what are you doing?
Hmm.
You're not supposed to be singing this. Stop changing the story. And she sings, I guess I'll miss the man. And so when she starts singing it, the lead player is like, well, guess what? You're not gonna have lights when you sing it. You're not gonna have a backup singer when you sing it. You're not gonna have any music when you sing it.
And it's
You're
just
gonna
stripped
sing
down
it
to
yourself.
just Catherine making it up on the spot, which is so nice because like I had said earlier, it's this is our moment where we see like the lead player trying to control Catherine, but Catherine, who has been with the troupe longer than probably most of the other ensemble members, doesn't want to be under the lead player's control anymore. She's resisting a little bit, and that's really telling for this last little bit that we're about to get into.
Mm-hmm. Then we get into the finale, the magic shows and miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. So in the revival, the leading player at this point is convincing Pippin that the only thing that's left to do is to do the big finale.
Mm-hmm.
And Pippin's like, what's the big finale? And everybody comes on stage and they're like, oh, yes, it's the big finale. Do the big finale. Do the big finale. And the big finale is setting himself on fire.
Yeah, the big finale is essentially a weird kind of twisted circusy ritual suicide where he jumps through a big fiery circle. And I think like if you want to get any more obvious that the lead player is the devil, you can't go any further than literal, like the end of the line is, here's hell, jump into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very obvious, but she tempts him and she pushes him with the idea that this is somehow more glorious and more fulfilling than anything else he's done, because at the end of the day, well, even if you don't enjoy your life, then they'll remember you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's such twisted logic, but it's a nice song. It's the darkest that the lead player gets, even a little bit more than glory, I think, which is hard to do, but she pulls it off. um and
Actually,
yeah, it just gets dark.
the leading player gets darker after this song.
that's,
Definitely
that's
gets
true.
darker after the song. So Catherine comes on stage and she and Theo are trying to, convince Pippin to go with them, go with them, go with them. And
Mm-hmm.
Pippin's like, you know what? You're right. I I don't know what I was thinking. And the leading player is going berserk, goes berserk.
Mm-hmm.
The leading player takes out all the lights, takes off their costumes, takes away the set, and says, now you're left with nothing. Enjoy it.
They take away their makeup, they take away their costumes. I remember in the movie version, they literally just leave them standing on stage, no lights, complete darkness, no music, nothing, in their underwear. They're just standing there, no costumes, no makeup, no magic, nothing. She just like, if you won't participate, then I'm going to take everything from you.
Mm-hmm.
But the best part is she does that, and Pippin and Catherine and Theo are still happy.
And so they start walking off stage, and Theo breaks away and goes back to the center of the stage, and there's a spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
and then Theo starts singing Corner of the Sky,
Yeah.
and the ensemble starts coming back on stage with the leading player.
Yeah. Back
Catherine.
with the motifs from Magic to Do again,
Mhm.
putting us back at the beginning of the show.
So Catherine and Pippin are trying to get to Leo, but the ensemble is separating them further and further away from Theo. And now Theo is the leading player's new victim. And
Yes.
it's a younger victim. So definitely the leading player can have as much free reign on this child
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah.
And
This is an ending.
That's how the
Yeah,
show ends.
Yeah. And it's unique to the revival and all the like the versions after that. But I have to say it's the perfect ending in my opinion. I don't know who came up with this, but I love them. It just works so well because it's the last little bit we get to really see how horrible the lead player is, and we kind of get a little more happy for Pippin and Catherine because they've managed to escape this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say, just to sort of wrap this section up, to sort of talk about this. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and end the song breakdown. So that way we can go ahead, let us go ahead and do the top 3 songs and that we both have. And then I'll go into the ending, because there are 2 endings to Pippin, and we'll talk about that very shortly. So, Caleb, top 3 songs.
Oh, that's hard. I was thinking about this. I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I still am not sure I've come up with it. I know in no particular order that one of them is definitely Glory. I love Glory. It's just, I've already gone into depth about this, but it's just so big and jazzy and gory, and I love it. I think I would say that Morning Glow is definitely one of the other ones. I really like I like the ballads in this show a lot, other than Love Song, because most of the ballads in this show are really strong. And I really like how Morning Glow shows us a more hopeful side of Pippin, because we get a lot of either the dark or the funny, or where he's just blinded and just following the lead player. And this is a nice moment where he really thinks he's done something on his own. He hasn't, but that's fine. And for the third one, it's really close between Corner of the Sky and the first part of With You, because With You, while not maybe the most plot relevant within the show, musically, I just love how it sounds. I love singing it. It's such a nice song. And so I think I'm going to have to go with You. Despite Corner of the Sky's real importance to the show, I just really love the score for With You.
My top 3 songs, this is going to be difficult because I love the show. I love the show to death. So if I were to choose my top 3, the first one, well, I'll say number 3 will be No Time at All, just because I love the song.
Another close one for me as well. I love that song.
Number 2 is going to have to be Right Track, because it's such a great song for Pippin and the leading player, and it's one of those songs where you get a lot of character development, because you get to see you get to see the control that Pippin that the leading player has over Pippin.
Yeah, that's true.
But my number 1 song, and you're gonna look at me and go, "What?" It's definitely War is a Science.
Oh, I can see that. It's a good one.
Love War is a Science. Now, to be very, very candid, and to be very, very, so I was almost in the production with Caleb for Pippin, and I was cast as Charlemagne, but I had to drop because of a wedding. And that wedding,
excited to see you in that role.
and that wedding was actually the wedding between Jennifer Lee and her wife Casey Lee, who was in the first episode of this podcast. So honestly, I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
No.
All right, random thoughts on this show. This is where we talk about just the craziness that is involved with this show. Now, we mentioned it before that this show has two endings. Now,
Yeah.
Caleb, I do got some information for you. So
Oh.
the Theo ending was originally conceived in 1998 by Mitch Sebastian. So, so before this show, so before 1998, the show would always end with Pippin, Catherine, and Theo going, well, I guess that's it. Just like how it was in the movie. Well, Mitch Sebastian was like, I want to do a little bit of a rewrite. So he had to get permission to do it. And now it's one of the choice endings you can do within the script.
Yeah, they give you the option when you put the production on. My production chose the Theo ending, which I was very happy with because it is, in my opinion, the superior ending.
It is. And it just shows that this is a constant loop. It is a constant loop. So if you really, really truly think about it, at the very beginning of the play, their Pippin is gone. So you're like, okay, what happened to him? And so they had to get a new Pippin. So if you really think about it, that means the Theo was that Pippin. And that Pippin went ahead and did the trick. So now they got to find a new Pippin and another kid. And it's this vicious cycle. And I'm just like, whoa.
Which raises the question, are Pippin and Catherine the first ones to escape? Or are they not? Which I think that's the other nice thing about the cyclical nature of the ending. It really provides more context for the theme that Pippin is just a story about life. And that's what I really like about Pippin most of all, is musically, it's just such a mishmash of different things that all work together really well. And show you all of these different sides of experiences that Pippin is trying. But at the end of the day, the story is not even really about Pippin. It's just about life in general. And for that reason, I kind of think the most plot relevant song is Birth's song, because the whole point is you have to enjoy the present moment, because eventually all that's left is apparently this big fiery hole at the end.
So, Caleb, on a scale of A+ to F, where would you rate Pippin?
Oh, that's hard. I was thinking about this one as well, and I also could not make up my mind. I love this show. I know it's not going to be an A+. There are things about this show that I feel like need a little more creasing out, especially Love Song. That spot on its own. If I were to give all of the individual songs ratings, I don't know what all of them would be, but I know Love Song would be at least a C- because it doesn't fit in the show that well. And it's so painful for me because the whole rest of the show works so well together. And anyway, I could go on and on about that. But Love Song alone definitely puts it down a little bit. And I also just think that some of the dialogue could be straightened out a little more. I really like every time they change it, it gets better. But I think I'm gonna have to decide on I'm gonna say B or B+, maybe an A-, because it needs some creasing out, it needs some fixing. Love Song is no, and the rest of it's so strong that it's definitely up in B+ territory. So I think I'm gonna say B+.
I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'm gonna take a little bit step further. I'm gonna give it a straight up B because of everything that you just said. But the thing about this particular show is it's easy to follow. Like, you don't have to think about it. You can just watch it and enjoy it for what it is.
Which is nice with how deep the themes are. Like the fact that it's so watchable and it's really easy to comprehend, because even though you've just heard all of this complicated stuff, like when you're watching it, it makes sense. And that's a good part of it.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's the only time that you really, really have to think is the very, very ending, where you go, what is going on here?
That is true.
All right, Caleb. So give me your final thoughts on this show.
if you are out there listening to this podcast and you have not listened to Pippin or seen Pippin, I don't know what you're doing with yourself. This is a wonderful show. I hope we've proven how good this show is. It's just one of my all-time favorite pieces of musical theater. I want to perform in it again and again and again and see everything I can do to it, because it's so versatile, because it conveys its complicated themes so well. There's so much you can do with it in the meantime. You can fit all kinds of circus tricks, and you can do all kinds of different casting, like having a female lead player, which works so well. And I'd like to see it changed more and more. I think that this is a show that could have another future revival, hopefully someday, that changes maybe even a little more of it, because it kind of feels like a really strong work in progress, but like that's part of the charm of Pippin, and you need to listen to it.
All right. Well, Caleb, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Absolutely.
It has been such a pleasure talking about Pippin with you.
It has. It's been wonderful.
All right, everybody else, stay tuned, because I'll be giving my final thoughts. And Caleb, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Kenny.
All right, my final thoughts. This is where I give my final opinion on the musical that we just discussed. Then, using a 5-star grading scale, I break the musical down into 5 categories: music, story, comedy, drama, and replayability. Finally, I will give it an overall grade with the help of opera singer Marseille Alundra. Now, Pippin, I enjoy Pippin. The story is kind of everywhere. You do get a feel for the musical from the very first song that Pippin sings, Corner of the Sky. It is literally about him just trying to find his peace in the world. His little patch of grass, as you can say. Pippin is, I don't want to say he's delusional. I don't want to say he's self-absorbed, but he kind of is self-absorbed. If it's not something that is for him, he'll go, okay, and he'll just abandon it immediately. But like all the other characters that are around him are hilarious, funny, conniving, and at some points overly sexual, which, hey, everybody loves a nice bawdy time. So random fun fact about Pippin. Well, it's not really a fun fact, it's more like a sad fact. In the original Broadway production, the character of Berth was played by Irene Ryan of Beverly Hillbillies fame. She played Granny. During one of the performances, she had a stroke, which took her out of the show, because as soon as she got off stage, she was like, I don't feel well, something's going on. So when they took her to the hospital, they was like, yeah, you just had a stroke, you should go home, relax, chill. So she flew home, and literally less than like 3 weeks later, she passed away. She pretty much died doing what she loved to do, which was performing. There's an award that is named after her called the Irene Ryan Awards that is given to 2 performers at the KCACTF festival, which F is festival. The acronym stands for Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. She's a great woman. It's a great show. Also, this is the only show where 2 people have won a Tony Award for the same role, but in different times, with Ben Vereen and Bettina Miller. So yeah, go ahead into the breakdown. So for music for this show, I love it. I love the music. So I'll give it 4 stars. For the story is very convoluted. It is, it makes fun of itself a lot. I mean, you kill a king and the king comes back and it says, don't do it again. So for story, I'll give it 3 stars. For comedy, within the script itself, there are a few comedic parts, but it's how the show is directed where the real comedy comes from. So for that, I'll give comedy 2 stars. For drama, there's not really a whole lot of drama in it. The real drama comes at the very end of the play with the Theo ending. And for that one, I'll give it 2 stars. For replayability though, the music is fun. The songs are fun. So I'll definitely give it 4 stars. So yeah, Pippin. I actually really do like this musical. Pippin to me is a fun, bawdy, sometimes very raunchy musical that it is there to make you laugh, smile, to be entertained. It is not a thought-provoking musical. It is not there to make you go, oh, that's interesting. It is literally there to entertain you. And for that, I will give Pippin an overall grade. I'm gonna give it a C, mainly because of the points that I just pointed out. There are other musicals out there that will literally make you sit and think, like Next to Normal. There are musicals that will make you go, huh, I never looked at it that way, like In the Heights. There are a ton of musicals out there that are based and grounded in reality, whereas Pippin is very outlandish and very out there, which I greatly enjoy it. So yeah, overall, I'll give it a C. So, Marseille, let me get that C, honey. Beautiful. And that's Pippin. So just to give you a little more information on Pippin, get my notes, hang on. So the original Broadway cast of Pippin was nominated for 11 Tony Awards, and it won 5, which is Best Performance of a Leading Actor in a Musical, won by Ben Vereen. Best Direction of the Musical and Best Choreography of the Musical, which was won by Bob Fosse. Best Scenic Design and Best Lighting Design. It also won 5 Drama Desk Awards for Outstanding Director, Outstanding Choreography, Outstanding Set Design, and Outstanding Costume Design. The Revival, on the other hand, was nominated for 10 Tony Awards, but only won 4, including Best Revival of a Musical, Best Actress in a Musical for Patricia Miller, Best Featured Actress in a Musical by Andrea Martin, who played Berth, which literally this performance of her singing, what's the name of that song? It's Time to Start Living is on YouTube. Please watch it. It is mind-blowing, ridiculous. And Best Direction of the Musical. It also won Drama League Awards, Drama Desk Awards, Outer Critics Circle Awards, and the Fred and Adele Astaire Award for Dance. The original Broadway cast of Pippin, it had its first preview October 18th, 1972. And it had its opening night of October 23rd, 1972, and it ran until June 12th, 1977, with 5 previews and 1,944 regular performances. The revival of Pippin had its first preview March 23rd, 2013, and its opening day was April 25th, 2013, and its closing night was January 4th, 2015, with 37 previews and 709 performances. You can purchase the original Broadway cast recording and the 2013 Broadway revival through Amazon, and you can also stream them both on Spotify. You can also watch the 1980 stage film version starring Ben Vereen, William Catt, and Cheetah Rivera on Amazon Prime or Broadway HD. You can apply for the rights for the 2013 Broadway revival version of the musical through Music Theater International. The link to apply for the rights can be found in the description below. Now, next week, I have a very special episode where I talk to 2 different families with children who literally grew up in the theater. And that will be pretty much an interview. So enjoy, and as always, Stay beautiful, you amazing creature. Take care. Thank you for tuning into The Whole Note. The Whole Note is recorded at Roxy Regional Theatre in Clarksville, Tennessee. Intro and outro, The Bumble by Joshua Pyron, and was inspired by The Flight of the Bumblebee. Grading scale notes sung by Marseille Alundra. This podcast is edited and produced by me, Kenneth L. Waters Jr. Tune in next week and discover a new musical. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay amazing, you beautiful creature.